Oh,
Cek, cek.
oke oke. Oh,
Nah, ini tadi gue nambahin dari gue. Oh, wah, Jadi yang mana tuh? Sinyalnya di sini nih. Gue ganti nama baru. Tapi tadi namanya klip lipus belum. Ini namanya Q&A. Tadi yang di sini berapa klip limanya? Ini spare di sini. Ini yang di nah, ini buat speaker ntar. Speaker 5 ya. Oh, mau geser aja deh. Geser aja. Yang Q&A 1 itu buat speaker 5. Nah, lagi buat satunya ada kue Q&A. Oh, ini mic-nya kegeser semua. Yang apa? Diganti namanya biar enak. Sik. Speaker sound check. Speaker 5 speaker 5 sound check. Speaker 5 sound check. A. O. Speaker 5 O. Speaker 5 sound check speaker 5 speaker 5 A speaker 5 A A A A. Oke nih pas A cek 1 2 enak udah enak A udah cek 1 2 A cek A cek 1 A s- 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 cek cek sound cek ini speaker 5 A A sound check A 1 A sound check A
Hello. Hi there. If everyone could take their seat, please, we're going to begin the next session. All right, excellent. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Hopefully everyone got their coffee, energized, ready for another exciting debate. So welcome to the next parallel session, the story of Shale, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So for those of you who were at the previous session, we had a pretty great introduction to the subject of the panel this morning, shale gas. So with this panel, we're going to take a little bit of a deeper dive and address some of the other issues. Before we get started, just a couple logistical announcements. So how this parallel session is going to run, I'm first going to introduce each of our speakers. Then they're each going to give a 5-minute brief presentation. And then there will be follow-up questions. And then we'll open up to the audience. There are 3 ways you can ask questions to the speakers. First will be if you go onto Twitter, it'll be hashtag ISIS 2015, hashtag shalegas. The second way will be Pigeonhole, which most of you should be familiar with now from the past couple days. So again, log on to Pigeonhole and post your questions. And then the third way, as you can see, we have the mic set up, and feel free to pose your questions directly to our speakers. They will not be using PowerPoints, but if you would like further information and more detailed information, they will be posting PowerPoints and PDF information online after the conference. So stay tuned for that if you're interested in more information. So without further ado, we'll kick off this parallel session. I'd first like to introduce Dr. Horst Reuter, who's the president of Harbordam. So for 32 years as the head of geophysics department of DMT, Horst nurtured the growth of the organization from a research group of the German coal mining, Germany's most important private geophysical contractor. If you could please give a warm welcome to Dr. Reuter.
So, good morning. So you have seen we have the word ugly in the session headline, and I don't know if a technology can be really ugly. But I know that the discussion and the disputation about the technology can really be ugly, and I think this is a case in the public discussion about shale gas or unconventional gas or even fracturing. So fracturing or fracking is a very bad word in the media, and comparable to nuclear maybe, I don't know. So I picked out to explain this a little more, the induced seismicity or the earthquake risk, to explain how the discussion goes and how difficult it is to stay to facts and to science. And of course this is possible here in enclosed rooms, but in the public it's very difficult to talk about things like that. So the word earthquake, of course, has the potential to be used from the opposition to argue against the shale gas, because everybody notices the pictures from big earthquakes in the television, and like tsunami or volcano eruptions and so on. The earthquake has the potential to create fear in the population and to enforce the opposition. So in fact, earthquakes are part of our nature, of our natural environment, and strong earthquakes are seldom, and very weak earthquakes are very, very frequent. So we have a magnitude 8 earthquake maybe on an average once per year, but we have a magnitude 3 earthquake about more than 1,000 times every day. So it's a daily event, and if we talk about induced seismicity in shale gas environment, we talk about those magnitudes. So a magnitude is a logarithmic scale, and one number higher means 30 times more energy, or 2 numbers higher. So magnitude 3 compared to 5 means about 1,000 times more energy. So coming to induced seismicity, so when people touch the underground, there is always a certain risk of creating earthquakes. This is with water dams, it is with all type of mining, extraction of gas, oil, coal, big quarries, also metro systems, digging in the earth, everything of such can create earthquakes. So if you talk about the earthquake potential of shale gas extraction or fracking, you have to compare it to the other mining methods or to the other energy supply methods, and you have to look if it is worse or it is better. So in fact, we had about more than 2 million fracking, and I want to say that it's an additional problem that fracking is always used similar to shale gas production or to unconventional gas production, but fracking is only one part, and we have to split up between the fracking operation, the production phase, and the reinjection of waste water. This is very difficult parts in the discussion about the earthquake risk. So the fraction itself, the making artificial fractures in the underground, is not very dangerous for earthquakes. So we had about more than 2 million fracking operations in the world and report only a very few felt earthquakes and no damage, even not cosmetic damage. And so it is not really an issue. The same is true for the production phase for some years of a producing well. So the extraction from gas per volume is much less than in a conventional gas production. So the shale gas production is less dangerous for earthquakes in the production phase than the conventional gas production. So the only phase which has the potential to create earthquakes, to trigger or induce earthquakes, is the reinjection of the wastewater. This is the same thing wherever the wastewater comes from. It can be municipal wastewater or wastewater from other type of industry, but it can also be wastewater from shale gas production. It is not essential that the wastewater has to be reinjected. So that is not an integral part of shale gas production, but is very often thought it is the best solution to get rid of the wastewater. And if you inject large volumes after a long time on the wrong place, this may induce earthquakes. But we have several thousand wells where wastewater, and again, we have only a very few where earthquakes were created. So there is a possibility to find the right place, or there is inject water on the wrong place. Also, we can monitor it, we can have a seismic system, we can have a traffic light system to get the injection controlled. So with the earthquake risk, I want to conclude, we have to concentrate on the water injection sites, which is also reported in the literature very often, but there also we have possibilities to control, and the main thing is to select the right place to do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Reuter. So I think it was a very good overview in terms of risk assessment and how we look at conventional methods of mining, fracking, and where we're headed today. I'd like to next introduce Ms. Laura Grant. She's a policy advisor of the Chartered Institution of Water and Environmental Management. Laura leads on the institution's policy and technical reports and consultations aiming to advance the science and practice of water and environmental management. Please help me welcome Laura.
Thank you. Is this on? Okay, thank you very much for inviting me here today. As Ashley says, from SciWem, we're based in London. We represent professionals around the world, from scientists, engineers, and environmentalists. We've been involved in shale gas since 2012 when it became a public policy issue in the UK. And since then, we've produced independent reports on potential impacts on water and the wider environment. We've been helping the UK government to develop their latest legislation and regulations on shale gas. So we've been looking at what's been happening around the world to try and see where we can learn best practice and make sure the environment is protected when we develop shale. For a bit of context, in the UK, we're right at the infancy. We are at the exploration stage. We've not gone into production, so we're just trying to get regulations sorted. So I guess really I'm here to talk about environmental impacts. And really these sort of fall into two categories. We've got the global impacts from shale gas, so whether it's still a fossil fuel, is it going to replace other fossil fuels, or is it going to compete with renewables? We think it needs to be developed in line with carbon budgets to make sure that we don't accelerate climate change. And then really we've mainly looked at the local issues. Okay, sorry, thanks. The local issues surrounding emissions to the air, to the natural environment, and to the water sector. So mainly I'll talk about water, as that is the institution's main area of focus. So fracking, both drilling and fracturing involve using water. Not vast amounts compared to other industries, but in the UK we have certain areas that are particularly water stressed. So there is the potential that there could be local impacts on water resources. We see also around the world, in parts of the States, in China, South Africa and Mexico, all have a high proportion of their shale gas reserves in areas of high or extreme high water stress. So it's just an area that the industry is going to have to be aware of. It could be a limiting factor, and it's where new technologies might be needed, such as waterless fracking, or those that require less water. One of the greatest concerns is contamination of water and the wider environment. We think the most likely pathway of contamination is through failure of the wellbore itself during drilling or fracturing operations. But this can be prevented through monitoring and make sure we have baseline monitoring in place. Another great concern is of spills, which can affect the water and wider environment. The latest report from the States suggests that 1 in 100 to 10 in 100 wells suffers from spills. So it's clearly an area that we need to improve upon. The risk that Horst was discussing from fractures actually propagating to the surface or to aquifers, we do think that risk is low, provided there is a separation between the shale zone and the aquifer. And again, monitoring will be important to assess if there is any impact. And the other aspect of water is the treatment of the waste when it comes back from the well. It contains a high number of contaminants, it's high saline, and there's also naturally occurring radioactive materials, which will all need to be treated and dealt with. So a couple of other environmental impacts: induced seismicity, we think that risk is fairly minimal, and actually re-injection is possibly the largest cause for concern, which in the UK we're keen not to develop. Air pollution, there's still quite limited information on this and its impact on human health, but risks should be low if sites are run and regulated properly. And there's also immediate impacts. See, a shale well involves land take. You might need a certain high number of wells to access a resource, which has risks for habitat fragmentation and disturbance of species, and also it's sort of where the risk with public opposition lies. So to conclude, really, there are environmental impacts, particularly on the local level, but we think that they, should the industry be run and regulated properly, best practices developed, then the risk can be managed. Thank you.
Hello? Thank you, Laura, for that, and going over kind of what are some of the more detailed risks in terms of air pollution, water pollution, contamination, and how can we move forward in terms of best practices. So thank you for that, and I'd like to now introduce Shale, who is the Deputy Director at the Center for Energy Economics and Development Strategy at the Energy Research Institute of NDRC. Her research focus includes China's energy strategy, policy, demand and supply analysis, planning, and energy model applications in oil and gas issues. So please help me welcome Shale.
Good morning, everyone. It's my great pleasure to be invited to attend this summit as a speaker. Today, I would like to share with you why does China want to develop shale gas resources. As you know, China is undergoing industrialization and urbanization. Its demand for energy will see long-term increase in the future. The Chinese climate has been impacted by the environmental disruption and greenhouse gas emission caused by the energy mix focused on the coal for a long time. And by energy security compromised by high dependency on oil, imported oil and natural gas. Despite its efforts on energy mix adjustment, such as rapid development, renewable energy, and nuclear power, China has had impressive results. Last year, the share of coal in the total consumption still accounted for 66%. Imported dependency on oil has reached close to the 60%. In addition, since the 2013, Beijing and many provinces in North China and the central region of China saw frequently widespread disasters, which greatly threaten human health and sustainable economic and social development in the country, imposing the numerous pressure on the government. So, to speed up the development of natural gas, become one of the practical and effective means to realize the optimization of China's energy mix. China has relatively rich resources of conventional natural gas, but only exploitation can no longer satisfy the rapid growth of China's natural gas demand. Last year, imported dependency on gas in China has reached over 30%. It's expected to break through the 35% this year. Therefore, the exploitation and utilization of the rich unconventional natural gas resources, particularly shale gas resources, have become a priority to solve the increasingly tight supply of the natural gas in China. The data released by the Ministry of Land and Resources in 2012 shows there is 25 PCM of recoverable shale gas in China. Although this figure is quite different from that evaluation by the EIA, you can also see the still indicated the great shale gas potential in China. According to the shale gas development plan to 2011 to 2015, China's goal of shale gas production is the 60.5 billion cubic meters in 2015, and 60 to 100 billion cubic meters by 2020. By the end of last year, the exploration rate of 54 on shale gas blocks has been set nationwide, covering an area of 117,000 square meters in total, with a total investment of 24 million Chinese yuan and 450 drilling wells. Three big oil and gas companies had proven the shale gas of 107 billion cubic meters. Last year, China produced the natural gas of 1.3 billion cubic meters. Now China is the third country who can produce the natural gas after the US and Canada. Thank you.
Thank you, Shale, for that and giving the perspective from China and what's going to happen with oil and what role does shale play in addition to impacts on human health and the economy as well. So thank you for that. Next up, I'd like to introduce Nick Greeley, who is the director of the energy consultancy No Hot Air, specializing in public perception and acceptance issues of shale worldwide. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. I'm going to try to keep to time because, I mean, you're all students. You hear enough lectures from a bunch of old people. You know, let's hear some questions from you guys. Mike Schellenberger really, you know, kind of warmed you up here to talk about the role of natural gas in the energy transition. Because right now there's three revolutions happening. There's efficiency, there's natural gas, and there's renewables. And that is part of a recipe for the future of energy development. It is not a menu. You cannot choose just renewables or just efficiency. It won't work. Unfortunately, it is seen that there's a binary choice between natural gas, which is just shale, or renewables. It's both. Natural gas can enable renewables and it can accelerate renewables. It's very important to consider that we cannot make the perfect the enemy of the good. We are in the world here today, and we need to make some choices. I'm also one of those kooky guys. I'm evolving from being a kind of apostle or evangelist for shale gas to somebody who's actually wants to produce it. And that's in my home, London, which is the only really developing world city in the so-called advanced world. London is going to be London, for example, is predicted to have up to 30 million people by 2050. This is something which isn't happening in any other advanced countries. And for that, you know, we've heard all about the good of shale gas, and natural gas is just, shale gas is just natural gas. And we say that coal saved the forests, oil saved the whales, natural gas saved the earth. But let's talk about the ugliness of shale, because I think that is one of the biggest misperceptions. I think that even Laura from my own country here doesn't quite get the two parts of the shale gas revolution. One is hydraulic fracturing. The other is horizontal drilling. Horizontal drilling means that we can go down and go up to, the world record right now is over 20 kilometers. In London, we are hoping, in London we're kind of doing it a bit backwards. We think we found the perfect place to do shale gas. under a great market, and now we've got to find some of oil and gas. Certainly we found some conventional oil, which is what we'll use to leverage that out. But to give you an idea, is we envisage in a industrial area of London, one well pad which would reach out and cover 200 square kilometers. How big would that pad be? That pad would be smaller than this room. We could fit in wells, probably 50 or 60 wells in a single room. If we look at these lights on the ceiling, that would be the spacing we have the wells. And then they would go down and they could go out up to, like I say, until our area runs out. So we think that shale, it's not perfect, but nothing is perfect. It is part of the solution, but it's not the solution. But it's also very important that we use our own energy. In London, Greenpeace tried to prevent me from drilling for oil. And I say, I'm trying to help you because I want to preserve the polar bears and the Amazon forests. And it's vital that we take some responsibility by accessing our own sustainable energy underneath us, even if that is hydrocarbons. Because as long as people continue to use them, then people will continue to try to stop them. Now, I'm happy to ask for any questions. I've actually got 6 seconds to spare. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. And next up, I'd like to present Barry Goldstein, the Executive Director for South Australia's Energy Resources Division within the Department of State Development. Help me welcome Barry on the stage. Thank you.
Hi. I'll try to warm you up and give you some high-level information that you can take back with you to help you consider later on questions. So you do know why you should never trust a subatomic particle. They bloody make up everything. I'm going to have to talk to you about some basic science and math. You do know that scarcity of resources, the absence of finding huge diamonds everywhere or large gold nuggets everywhere, is because you need several degrees of freedom, several subsurface conditions to operate simultaneously through time to create those particular resources. There's gold in seawater, but it's not economic to get it out. In other words, everywhere there's seawater, there's gold. It's not rare, but the economics censure what you can produce to market. There's a concept called resource pyramid, where, yes, I can guarantee we are out of $1 oil. We are not out of $100 oil, and we're not at $40 oil. And you have to come up with the understanding that was mentioned by the speaker earlier, Schellenberger, that when a new energy supply is sufficiently ubiquitous that it can provide everybody everywhere safe, secure, competitively priced energy without subsidy, without distorting the balancing of budgets, well, when that new energy supply, whether or not it's nuclear, whether or not it's solar, whether or not it's wind, when that energy supply meets those criteria, it will supplant all of the other energy supplies. But until such time as we actually have those alternative energy supplies, which don't distort national budgets, which don't mean that you can't build hospitals and schools because you're putting too much money into one portion of your balanced society, we're just not ready to instantaneously snap our fingers and say, it's renewables right now. Okay? And that's what we get this concept of transition fuel. So I'm just going to go ahead and explain a few other things. I mentioned this yesterday, but in traditional oil and gas exploration, the degrees of freedom of, I need a rock which can turn solid organic matter into liquid petroleum and gaseous petroleum. I need that liquid and gaseous petroleum to be able to escape from that source rock and migrate into a reservoir, which is trapped, and it backs up and you accumulate and you have a commercial quantity of oil that you can get out. Shale represents the source, the trap, and the reservoir. We don't have the same myriad degrees of freedom of or uncertainty about where to find the shale. We're now only trying to find the best shales, have the right liquids richness, which can actually produce the most product for the lowest cost. And despite the fact that the price of oil had fallen by 50%, 50% of the shale in the U.S. is still economic at $50 U.S. a barrel of oil equivalent. And in fact, we're not out of $2 gas, but there's not a lot of it left. We're certainly not anywhere near out of $8 gas. There's huge, and it gets back to the resource pyramid. So listen, that's some basic information I wanted to relate to you, and I'll just leave you with, you know what you call a fish with no eyes? Fish. Thanks.
All right, thank you very much for that, Barry. And just a quick sum up before we dive into questions, because Pigeonhole is blowing up, so I want to give you guys a chance to ask questions. So first of all, thank you again to all of our speakers and kind of giving a rundown of what are some of the risks, what are some of the benefits when we talk about shale, all the way from human health, air pollution, water pollution, risk of earthquakes, but also how can shale gas be a part of the solution as we're trying to attain a sustainable energy future. So all these things are taken into account in terms of kind of our future energy mix. What are the pros, what are the cons, and where does shale fit in? So I'd like to now open up the session for question and answer. So I'll first take a couple questions from Pigeonhole. So keep voting, keep uploading your questions, as well as don't forget you can post your questions to Twitter. Again, it's hashtag ISIS2015, hashtag shalegas. So feel free to use that platform as well. And then after some of the Pigeonhole questions, we'll have you guys come up to the mics. So first of all, let's see. Is it up? Okay. So the first question I'd like to pose to the panel is, how can we make sure shale gas is environmentally friendly? And so if anyone would like to start, that's the most...
One of the key issues that you have to appreciate about shale gas is that the key risk to the environment is not fracture stimulation, it's well integrity. We drill water wells, and if they're not lined and cemented in place, you can contaminate fresh water supplies with salty water supplies through subterranean crossflow. The same is true for natural petroleum accumulations in the ground. When you measure the amount of chemicals that you deploy in any one fracture stimulation, the mass balance expression of that in the size of water which forms an aquifer is nothing relative to standards for norms for contaminating those aquifers. Yeah, you might not be able to say that for 1 million wells, but we're not drilling 1 million wells in one place ever. So please appreciate that when you talk about wanting to make sure that the development and the exploration for shale is environmentally sustainable, make sure you have a look at the chemistry, make sure you have a look at the physics. We can't lift 4 kilometers of rock with a hose relative to induced seismicity. And it is well integrity. It's getting the cement right and the seal right. It's measure and monitor so that you don't allow things to get untoward without you knowing it. And I can assure you that, by the way, a study in Australia by the independent Commonwealth Science Research Organization worked out that the fugitive emissions that come from all of the coal seam gas wells, based on the statistics of looking at a number of coal seam gas wells, both the connections and the plants that are used to produce it, says that on average, each coal seam gas well produces the greenhouse gas emissions of 4 cows. It's a 4-cow equivalent.
So I think if we compare unconventional gas to conventional gas, I think the main difference for the environmental impact is the density of installations at the surface. And as the gas in a conventional deposit, in a secondary deposit, travels very easily in the pore volume of the sandstone or the carbonate to the drill hole, there can be a long distance between the gas coming to the borehole. So in shale gas, it's a very small distance, and so you need many more holes coming close to the gas in the shale. And so we heard before that there are some parameters, so that is the number of holes can drill from one place. It's a big difference if you can drill 20 holes from one place or maybe only 8 holes. And the distance of the laterals, it is 3 kilometers or it is 20 kilometers. I think you can extract with longer horizontal holes and more holes per drilling place. You can avoid many of installations, and it maybe a factor of 100 you can come down compared to the actual situation in the US, where the legislation is different from other countries, and also the economics, and maybe if the installation of a drilling place is expensive, then long laterals are economic, and if a drilling place is cheap, maybe you can stay with shorter and you need more installation. So the environmental impact from the underground is very little, and it's not much difference between conventional and unconventional gas, but the density of the installation at the surface, the roads that has to go there to supply and so on, these are the main environmental impact.
Thank you for the question. I'd probably like to say that I don't think we can make shale gas environmentally friendly. In addition to the points made, yes, well integrity is probably the most important factor, but I also think we need to be adopting the precautionary principle and making sure we're not drilling and fracturing in areas of protected groundwater, of national biodiversity, sensitive areas. It's best just to rule it out. Other things we can do is make sure the industry is adopting best practice. So in terms of not holding liquids on site for too long, not storing it in open tanks, just trying to reduce these risks as far as possible. And then did you want me to go on the next question? So someone asked a question of that monitoring is not a...
I mentioned about measure and monitor being a requirement.
Yes, monitoring should certainly be a requirement, but monitoring is not a prevention strategy. No, it's not, but the kind of monitoring I mean is when we're drilling the wells, each well has a multi-barrier system, so that if one casing fails, there will be others to protect it. So what you need to do is make sure that you're monitoring the cement as you pour it, and make sure that you've tested it before you go on to the next stage and before you do any operations, and make sure that the well is completely secure.
This is now working, I think.
Okay. A couple of ones. We're talking about water. Shale gas, obviously we want to protect water, but one of the reasons why we have these multiple casings and protections about mixing gas and water is that if you mix water into gas, you make it worthless. So therefore we have an incentive not to do that. I think people forget about that. Similarly, methane emissions. We're going to all this trouble, annoying a lot of people. Why would we want to throw away our product? The entire reason for us drilling for shale gas is to get people to buy it. So I think the majority, in fact, any issue in shale gas is solvable. There is really no 100% reason not to do it. And let's just go quickly to CO2. If you have local gas, that is better than imported gas. In Europe, any of the LNG that we would get would have a CO2 cost of up to 8%. But if we have it local, we say in London, think of the concept of food miles, energy miles, it's the same thing. It's better to have sustainable local produce, whether it be strawberries, potatoes, or natural gas.
Okay, thank you guys for answering that. We'll take one more from Pigeonhole, and I see some students lining up, so then we'll get to you guys. So this question, on average, from a scale of 1 to 10, how ready are developing countries in adopting shale gas technology? What are the challenges in adopting shale gas technology for developing countries?
Let me split things into below ground risks and above ground risks. The only reason why shale has only gotten off the ground in North America is because of the interconnected pipelines, the vast supply of drilling rigs and capital, which could afford billions of dollars all at once. They literally had hundreds of separate operators, each of them a lab, testing and tweaking to try to come up with a little bit better cookbook recipe. And every 15th or 50th well, they had an aha moment. And because they're all using the same service companies, those aha moments, those innovations, were captured by everybody in the industry simultaneously. There isn't another place in the world right now that actually has the infrastructure, the capital, and the service companies already existing to replicate the North American example. But there's nothing in the world stopping people from deciding where there are sweet spots and having a go.
Yes, I agree with that the speaker said, but you know that in my presentation, I told that China is currently the shale gas producing countries, but we also have many challenges. One of the challenges is the gas infrastructures. So that's it is not in the past, even we developed and constructed many long-term track gas pipelines, but they also lack of the gas market development. So that's even we want to develop the shale gas on large scale, so that it is challenges.
All right, let's take a couple of questions from the floor, and then we can go back to some of the questions on Pigeonhole. So, gentleman right in front of me. Yep. And make sure you give us your name and where you're coming from.
My name is Brett Stevenson. I'm coming from Beijing. I work for the American Chamber of Commerce. We'll be cooperating with National Development Reform Commission on an event next week along these questions. My question is related to connecting the unconnected and the previous discussion about the fossil fuel market. I wanted to ask, what do you see in Asia, in particular, the shale gas would playing in the energy mix, and particularly playing into the connecting the unconnected? There's many people, particularly in India, and maybe you can also include that into Africa, to the extent shale gas can provide jobs or even opportunities, and getting those unconnected to use shale gas and in developing countries. So yeah, that's my question. Thank you.
I can just kick off a little bit. And very simply speaking, shale gas will happen in many countries around the world within the next 10 years. That's supply-side competition like there's no tomorrow. And supply-side competition lowers price. and a lower price is good for economies around the world. And so the question is how fungible, how international, and the only way right now that we can actually transfer shale gas internationally is with LNG. And I think a couple of days ago, or yesterday rather, one of the Indonesian experts was talking about need to develop some micro LNG and micro ships, things that can meet smaller markets. So I think that one of the key answers on new technologies is being able to sell gas in smaller quantities as liquefied gas.
Thank you.
Yes, I would say to watch out. You don't necessarily need a gas grid. If you have gas to power, if you have even a small gas field, turn that into power right there, and perhaps in places like Africa where there is essentially no gas grid at all, that is the solution. I think that India is very lacking in shale gas. China is getting natural gas from Russia, from Myanmar, from Uzbekistan, for domestic and offshore. They get that. Because let's remember, this is the year of COP21 in Paris, and the solution from the United States and China depends on renewables, efficiency, and natural gas replacing coal, which is cutting carbon. And both of those countries have demonstrated that, and the two countries together are over about 45% of all CO2 emissions. So that's what we should be looking at.
Would any of you three like to respond to that as well? Any comments? No? Barry? Did you follow up? No. Okay. All right. Thank you. If I could take the gentleman to the left.
Good morning, speakers, and one and all. Thank you. My name is Ambu. I'm from India, currently doing my master's in energy management. And my first question is, how the oil-producing countries are going to balance their budgets? The prices are below $60 per barrel today. Countries like Nigeria, Iraq, Venezuela, Russia, they need at least $100 and $120 per barrel to, to balance budgets. The first question. And the second is, typically, shale oil wells are short-lived, and any slowdown in investment can quickly translate into falling of production. So, how we are going to overcome this? At least, we need at least $1.5 million, to rig a small shale oil well. How are we going to overcome this?
I'll just offer one quick answer to the first bit. Unless countries who have got a high cost to balance their budgets diversify their economies, they will not balance their budget based on a low product price for the oil product that they actually depend upon. There isn't another magic pudding for that.
In terms of the economy, anyone like to respond?
I would say that is a danger for developing countries. For countries that have, when you have a country like Algeria, for example, that 96% of the foreign exchange depends on sale of natural gas. That is a major problem. But on the other hand, it also does other things from my own country, if I could say that, including Scotland, is that the North Sea is getting killed by $75 an oil up. And it's a bit of an annoyance to us why they don't support the onshore in the UK, which would actually make money.
There is one other salient point I would make. The countries that most benefit from low petroleum prices are those countries that depend upon agriculture, who use those petroleum products as fertilizer. And I know that India was singled out as the single largest beneficiary of lower oil prices through its macroeconomics because its cost of inputs into its agricultural products had just declined by quite a bit. So, but getting back to this bit about balancing budgets, that's the dilemma for transitioning to lower greenhouse gas. That's a dilemma for transitioning to just renewables, is it just doesn't happen without a diversification of technologies and products.
Thank you, Barry. We're going to take one of the questions from Pigeonhole real quick. So here we
Thank
go.
you.
So if the cost effectiveness of gas is ignored, does the industry still believe this is the best energy source, even with the effects it has on environments such as earthquakes and pollution? And if Forrest, you would like to comment?
So, okay, I will answer this. I think compared to the other fossil fuels, maybe the gas, the natural gas, not only the shale gas, is the best bridge to the renewables. So, you know, from all numbers we heard in the past sessions, that there is a need for fossil fuels for a limited time, and the gas, of course, has the best with regard to the CO2 production. So another comment, I think we always talked about the upstream risks and problems, but if we really talk about gas and oil and coal, we have to take into account the downstream also. And I think the distribution of oil and gas is much more risky than the production of oil and gas, and that was never touched in the summit until now. I think also the liquid gas distribution will have a lot of risk. Another comment, I heard many thousand times the word energy in the last 2 days, but never the word exergy. And the exergy is a much more important value. So you should consider to talk more about exergy also in those meetings. And I think the only way to get rid a little bit of the gas and the fossil fuels is to stop burning gas for heating purposes. So it's a sin against the nature to make a flame with 800 degrees to heat a room to 22 degrees. So please consider that there are much better solutions for heating and cooling than using fossil fuels. And as long as people burn gas for nothing, there will be a large production of gas. And so please consider more the downstream part and think about exergy.
I guess in terms of fossil fuels, then yes, I'd have to say natural gas is the cleanest and has the least carbon dioxide, provided it is extracted responsibly. But I think, yes, its only use is in the medium to short term, whilst we decarbonise. There's always going to be a role, well, not always, but in the medium term, there's always going to be a role for gas, because in the UK at least, 8% of our homes are heated by gas. And obviously it's not the best technology, but it's the technology we have. And while we work to replace those systems, we are going to need gas.
Anyone else want to respond to that? No? Okay. We'll take one more pigeonhole, and we'll go back to the floor. So this question, let's see, there we go. Even though we met the safest and cleanest solution to fix the environment and health problem, how about your perspective that shale gas is capable enough compared with renewable energy in terms of environmentally friendly? And the follow-up comment is, we know that the effect of operating shale gas will produce so much of a groundwater problem. How can we solve this?
Okay, a couple of things. First things first. Not all shale actually produces any large amount of water. And however, fracture stimulation uses water, but you can actually recycle the water used in fracture stimulation. So water can become a non-issue bar economic censorship of that reuse practice. I'd like to actually go to the heart of that question, and that is, how do you actually satisfy potentially affected people and enterprises that the social, natural, and economic risks posed by any enterprise are manageable and can and will be managed? And fundamentally, if your regulators are not up to the task And when I say that, I mean your co-regulators, people who are in charge of occupational health and safety, the people who are in charge of having the back of the environment, the people who are in charge of worrying about health. You actually have to have that co-regulatory sphere well geared up, and you are they in the future. So what it breaks down to is don't allow activities to even begin to happen until you know that the actual risk mitigation that is going to be put into place meets community expectations.
Laura, I think you wanted to say.
And I just want to come back on that. I don't think we can say that water is a non-issue or can become a non-issue when 38% of world shale reserves are in areas of high or extremely high water stress. It is going to be an issue. And we can't let our drive for shale gas compete with other needs such as agriculture and water the environment. Water reuse is technically possible, but how clean do we need that water to be re-injected into the ground and not cause contamination? It's going to require high amounts of energy input again to clean it up. So is it as safe as renewable? Is this as productive as renewables? I'm not so sure.
Osmotic desal doesn't require a lot of energy.
Nick?
I would also say, Laura, that you know as well as I do that 25% of all water in the United Kingdom escapes in leaks from the distribution system. So if we're concerned about water, worry about the 25%, not worry about the 0.001% of that. I think that people in my country are too busy examining the bark of a tree with a microscope to see that they live in a forest. Let me just go quickly to the issue of groundwater. There seems to be a great given that we pollute groundwater. The US EPA released a study last Friday, and that was on the basis of almost 5 years worth of study. And there is, the only thing that happens to groundwater is that occasionally on a well pad like this, somebody may drop a barrel of something, and that is groundwater. Nobody is polluting aquifers. It is physically impossible for water to come up 2, 3, 4 kilometers from underground. I just would suggest that people perhaps study this in a bit more and context, and to see how often the quick, easy, bad things about shale are just simply not true.
All right, thank you. Actually, I'll let Laura respond to that, and then we're going to get back to questions on the floor.
Sorry, I just want to quickly come back on that. The US EPA report out last week did say that there was no endemic pollution of groundwater, but it did say that the industry has been having spills all over the place, 10 to 100, 10 in 100 in some states. And these are reaching the soils and they are reaching groundwater. And yes, you're right, fracture itself might not propagate upwards into the aquifer, but if you drill through one and it leaks, then there will be a pollution incident.
Thank you. And gentleman right front, we'll kick it back to the floor. If you could, again, state your name and where you're coming from.
Okay, thank you. I'm Liu Xing. I'm Chinese international student from Hiroshima University in Japan. My first question concerning China's energy consumption issues. Like the presentation given previously by Ms. Liu, at present, coal contribute almost 67% of China's total energy consumption. But at present, coal is notable for its contamination to the environment. So China is shifting its attention to increase the shares of natural gas and crude oil place in its natural consumption. So how could natural gas shape the future consumption of energy of China. My second question concerning China's energy import issue. We build pipelines in order to import gas.
Hello? Wonderful. Okay. So the first question, and I believe, Charlie, if you want to take a stab at this first, looking at future energy consumption, what role will shale gas have in terms of future energy consumption within China? And then the second one relating to the evaluation of it.
Yeah, thank you very much for your questions. Yes, currently the share of the coal in the total energy consumption is so high. Sorry. To reduce the coal consumption, currently we take some measures. One is the improve the energy efficiency from the different industries. Second measures is to develop the utilization of the gas, including shale gas. But it's quite difficult to increase the share of the natural gas in total energy consumption, because China is rich in coal resources. The coal price is quite lower compared to the natural gas price. So it's very hard for the industry or another sectors to replace of the coal from the natural gas. So you probably know that currently China's economy into the new normal. So and with this new situation and the higher gas price, so yes, that's if we want to use the more gas, so we should find some ways, including the reform the gas pricing mechanisms, and also the reform the electricity price mechanisms. That means we will raise a little bit the electricity price for the gas used for the power sector. And for reduce the coal shares, another way is to develop the renewable energy and nuclear power. So, but the development of the renewable energy is going very fast. But the problem is the total energy demand is so huge, so it's quite difficult to reduce the coal, the share. But the government, like the President Xi Jinping, proposed the energy revolution. I think you heard already. So we give the coal consumption a ceiling. So I think in the near future, we can see the share of the coal in the total energy consumption will be decreased. So for the second questions, I think it's quite tough the questions. So yes, but so I think for the how to evaluate the gas resources in the near the South Sea, China Sea. So I think for our policies, we want to cooperate with the countries of the South Asia. So that means we can cooperate to develop the natural gas, not only for the China market. I think we can for the global gas market.
Excellent. Thanks, Shale. Next.
But excuse me, but can I ask something about my second question? Because I want to hear something about their evaluation concerning China's expansion overseas. Because not only in South China Sea, China import natural gas and crude oil from Africa. Because a lot of Western media criticize China's involvement with Africa as a new colonialism. So I want to hear something about this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Could I just offer one thing which has nothing to do with politics?
Okay.
And doesn't come from myself as somebody who knows everything, or in fact much at all about China's specific energy needs. Anything that fosters a wider global supply of diverse range of energy supplies, anything that fosters development and jobs in underdeveloped countries is actually heading towards prosperity faster than not. So if anything, international trade is actually a plus in terms of promoting prosperity. And if you actually think about wanting to try to fight over resources, making sure that we have plenty of alternative energy supplies available at affordable prices is a good way to keep us fighting over resources.
Would anyone else like to respond to that, or Nick?
Let me just say on the subject of China, 26% of all CO2 emissions come from Chinese coal combustion. We sell Chinese coal. This is a gift China can give the world. As you know well, China is very active diplomatically, and they realize their responsibility in the climate change negotiations to cut coal, and they're looking at natural gas from everywhere. But that also makes, for example, in Europe, if we decarbonize 100%, we would take about 4% off of CO2 emissions. So we do have to keep that in perspective.
Shale, did you want to make a comment?
Yes, I just want to remind of you for the CO2 emission issues in climate change issues. So I think you should know that we are in the different stages of the development. Yeah, you know for the developed countries, they had experienced the coal use on larger scales in the past decades. But currently, China in the stage of the industrialization, urbanization stage. So, even we have this situation, but we tried to make efforts to reduce the coal use. That means we also want to reduce the CO2 emission.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Rina, and I'm from Canada. I study in University of Calgary. My question is specifically for Ms. Laura Grant and Mr. Nick Greeley. You mentioned about groundwater contamination, aquifer, and my question is, can you specify any established methods or advancements to protect groundwater system aquifer during the extraction of shale gas?
Again, the EPA report has shown there has been no contamination of aquifers from shale gas. None. There have been very local impacts from spills on sites. Something may fall in a stream or something like that. But certainly nothing that is intrinsically dangerous about shale. There are accidents everywhere. Despite all the lovely food here, you probably do not want to go in the kitchen. You don't need to know how the photocopier actually works, but we do need to get the guarantees that water is going to be safe, and I believe that we have that, and I think that also we just have to look. I'm losing my voice. No, it's returned. I think that, aquifer contamination has never been proven anywhere with 1 million drills in the United States. So perhaps there may be a 1 out of 1 million, but it is essentially going to be safe.
Yeah, I guess really there is a distinction to make between groundwater and groundwater aquifers where we source our drinking water. So the EPA report did specifically drinking water sources, not groundwater as a whole. And in the UK, we're developing our regulations, and we have said that there should be no drilling or fracturing within principal aquifers or within our first source protection zone area. And I think that's the right approach. I think avoiding it is the best thing we can do. And then in the zones further away from aquifer, it's making sure we do best practice, making sure the lining of the well is intact, and monitoring the operations and shutting them down if something does go wrong.
So again, I want to come back to my upstream and downstream thing. And borehole in the production phase of gas well is just a vertical pipeline. And it's the best protected pipelines with maybe 3 tubes of steel and cement in between. And the contact to the drink water producing aquifer is maybe a few of 10 meters. And on the distribution side, you have horizontal pipelines filled with gas and oil and wastewater and whatever, going thousands of kilometers in the drinking water. And there is much more risk and much more danger coming from the maybe municipal wastewater pipelines, or alone in the small Germany, 10 houses are blowing in the air by gas every year, and 20 people are killed by carbon monoxide toxicity. And this is all on the distribution side. This is much more risky than the production side. And I guess if we take care of our drill holes and the regulation and the monitoring is a little bit better, and we can avoid accidents in a normal usage of a vertical pipeline to transport gas, there is no risk for the groundwater.
I'll just agree with everything said, but I am a regulator, and I can say that in all forms of regulation, prevention is better than cure, and that making sure that the cement and the casing is pressure tested properly and is monitored so that the conditions of the cement are understood is actually the best way. And this isn't just the oil and gas industry. Number of barriers and multiple barriers that you can put into place to logically preclude pollution of any kind is something that is the goal for any environmental risk. Multiple barriers, measure and monitor. This is theoretical, but if you put in practice, but you've got to have people who are qualified as to be your regulator, to have the public's back.
All right, thank you. And I am so sorry, but unfortunately we're going to have to close session. But I would invite the speakers to stick around for a few minutes so you can still come up to them and talk to them and continue this very exciting debate and conversation. So just first of all, if everyone could help me thank our speakers for their time here and their debate. So, and now just a couple closing comments and some housekeeping. So first of all, I'm sure your stomachs are already growling, but lunch is going to be served right outside the doors in the pre-function room. Also, we are hosting student interviews in Legion Room 1, so go just up this escalator there. We would love to hear your thoughts about the session, anything else about the summit, so please come to the room, grab some lunch, give us your inputs. We'd love to hear from you. Also, Student Energy is accepting bids for ICES 2017. So if you love what you're hearing here in terms of the debates, the dialogues, networking, all that fun stuff, and you want to bring it to your city, definitely come up. Again, grab some lunch. We're going to be in Legion Room 7. Again, on the next floor, it's going to be all the way at the end of the hall. So if you're interested, again, in bringing ICES 2017 and getting some more info on how to bring this summit to your city, come and see us. Finally, during lunch, we're selling drink tickets. So some of you saw last night, in order to get drinks, you have to have the ticket. So there's going to be a table on the right-hand side as you exit these doors to get drink tickets. And then finally, the Innovation Jam. That's going to be the next session occurring after lunch. So this will be your chance to brainstorm ideas with your fellow delegates. It's a really unique piece to the summit, so come. Make sure you get your coffee, get energized. It's going to be a really awesome time. So thank you again for your time, and let's thank our speakers again for this awesome discussion.